You're the one for me. There's no other guy. Take your place. You're the one for me. There's no other guy.
Hi, we're OfferPad, and we want to buy your home. Just go to OfferPad.com, enter basic information, and we'll send you a competitive.
You're the one for me. There's no other guy. Take your place. You're the one for me. Take your place. You're the one for me. There's no other guy. Take your place, please. You're the one for me. There's no other guy. Take your place, please. You're the one for me. There's no other guy. Take your place, please.
And yes, guys, we're live. Part two of the show with Mike Acosta. Super cool to see already the stream filling up. I see so many people already. That's amazing. I saw Hayden sitting in the front seat row. Very cool. M Debs, welcome. Scrooge that dude. Super cool. Ket Hagaha, nice. Lucas also here. Mike Acosta, of course, Mike Acosta, because this is part 2 with Mike Acosta. Choco Bratel, Bram is again in the house. Antonio Pedro and Waxted 8800 also. Now look at that, and if it's filling up the chat. Very nice. Joe Collier, welcome. It's Sunday, 3rd of April. This is the I do this, but it's the second part. With Mike Acosta, and like we've said online, it's this time less chatting and more busy with the MV, which is just awesome to do. So cool, guys, welcome. Meanwhile, FM Magic 2000 Able. Hi, Rogier. Very cool. Nice to see you all. The starting music. I started this stream with a part of a stream that we did before with the MV, all MV. And for Hardware Jams, I made a 10-minute track, all made with the MV. I used patterns, only patterns. If you listen carefully, you will hear the points where I switched to another pattern. So you have to listen it again. It's on the YouTube channel. And when you listen, you hear the moments when I switched to another pattern. A little silence point. Anyway, but I was convinced and dedicated to use only the MV with resampling. Anyway, well, like I said, 3rd of April, Sunday, second part. You know what? Let's go to Mike. And here he is, Mike Acosta. Welcome to the show. Let me give a big applause. Nice to see you over here. Very cool. Hi.
What's up? Hello. Good. Oh, actually, good afternoon now. So.
It's for you. Good afternoon. Did you have in the US the summer change like we had last week here in Europe?
Yeah, we here in California we still have the daylight saving time, so it's 12:30 p.m. here.
So
We
okay,
went
yeah,
an hour ahead.
okay, an hour ahead, like we had also here. Now, very cool. Yeah, last week it always I suffer always with changing to summer, changing to winter. It's fine, but changing to summer, then losing 1 hour, man. It was a tough week, but I'm getting used to it now. So, how have you been the last month?
Busy. Still busy as always. Every day running the BPM Create platform and stuff. So that's takes up a good chunk of my time Monday through Friday and stuff. But I get to work with a lot of really great, talented people over at BPM Supreme and my team with BPM Create. And then, just working with a pool of really talented musicians and sound designers that, work together with me to create a lot of the content that is on the BPM Create platform. So, feeling very blessed that I get to do this every single day still, at this time. And yeah, so I'm good. I've just been, busy working on music, super creative for some weird reason. Like in the last 3-4 weeks, I've literally been just cranking out like a lot of remixes and things like that. Sometimes it happens where I just get into this flow of things and it's just like, and I get all these ideas. And
Yeah.
so, and I've got a lot of shows coming up for the summer. The first real big show is going to be I'm playing in Vegas on May 18th. No, not May 18th, for Memorial Weekend. So May 28th. I'll be DJing in Vegas. So
In Vegas, my.
yeah, so for that show, definitely I want to, have a lot of, new music and remixes and special bootlegs and stuff that I like to play in my sets and stuff, to always just keep things interesting.
So actually, you are okay. Music is your job. Is your life. But so on the 28th of May in Vegas, you do a set.
Yeah.
Wow. And
So I'll be DJing in Vegas on the 28th for Memorial Weekend.
very cool. And how long is a set for you?
It varies. Depending on the venue, certain like lounges and bars and things like that, sometimes I'll do maybe a 4-hour set. And then other events, it may only be an hour to 2 hours, as a guest DJ spot if there are other, DJs that are on the lineup. So the one for Vegas, I think I'm only doing an hour and a half. And I think it's kind of like an all day, all night kind of big special thing to really kick off, the summer. It's Memorial Day weekend. So of course that's huge in Vegas.
So I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry. I'm going to interrupt you because of something other huge is that N4 just donated $10 to the chat, which is awesome. It's really cool, and also what we see in the chat, it's a cool dude. and for very good. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Okay, continue.
Yeah, no. So, like I said, it just really depends on the venue. So for something like Memorial Weekend, obviously they're bringing in a host of really great DJs from all over. So I'm super excited because I get to play with a few DJs that are based here in LA. As well as some other like well-known DJs that are, coming in from, other states and stuff. So one of the guys that I get to play with is, a longtime buddy of mine and partner, Tony B, who's got a very long, reputable history here in LA, as being, one of the DJs and producers, for Power 106 here in Los Angeles, with the Power Tool show with him and Richard Vision. And so, I get to play with him, other guys like Jose Too Hype. So just again, a really great pool of like talent that there, and I can't say a whole lot more because they haven't really fully announced all the DJs that are going to be playing that night. So I had to catch myself there because I don't want to say anything else. But right now, Tony B and myself are the two main headliners for this. And so we'll be doing that. And yeah, so just getting a whole lot of things. And actually, there's 2 tracks that I'm currently working on right now where I did a lot of the drums and the programming in the MV, and then just shot that out into Ableton and then finished everything out there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I need a bell or something like this, because meanwhile, MixDown 8800 also made a donation on the channel. Awesome, $20. It's really cool, guys. we're not. I feel like what's it a movie called? Well, Wayne's World, right?
You got the Dave Rosam effect.
Oh, this is cool. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really, really cool. The Dave Rosam effect, yeah, cool. Yeah, that's it's one of the videos Wexted did with the Dave Rosam effect, and then I feel ashamed, because then I think, who's Dave Rosam, and then I feel ashamed when I looked it up.
There's nothing. I mean, like, I've been around a long time, and there's still a lot of names and things that I won't always know. I don't know who designed every synth. You know, it's like, I just know it was a cool instrument. I may not know who designed it and all those things, and doesn't make me any less of a musician because I'm not that geeky, you know. But I'm a pretty big ass geek nerd, so you know, so I can't really say that about myself. But you know, I mean, it just depends. You know, like how there's just some guys that just really get into it. And, I mean, there's guys that will tell you, like, who created the capacitors that went into this, and it was taken from. And it's like, man, I don't go that deep. It's a great instrument. I loved it. It's got a unique sound, but man, I don't know about all the ins and outs and the, you know, the all the things that these guys get into. It's insane.
It's insane.
It's instantly. It's interesting to hear, and I love watching those things and learning about it. But I'm not the guy that knows, like, all that. I take that in and then, oh, okay, good, cool, good to know. So then, you know, but yeah.
Yeah, you know, for others we are nerds, but then between the different grades there are in the. You're totally right. There are different kind of nerds, and I call them nerds, but it's just awesome to know those kind of things. I love it when people tell me, well, you know, this is coming from that. That's just awesome. Great. So yeah, Mike, before we we chat too much, although people all also ask for more stories from you, because also that is very, very nice to know. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the quantize. Oh man, help me.
Oh, I got something for you guys. Hold on.
No way. What?
Let me see if this actually plays. Let me know if you hear this. I'm going to open this, and let's see.
Well, look,
can you hear that voice?
Yeah, I hear the voice. We hear.
All right, so this is the Qualatize. I actually have the original video because I sampled it. I found it. So here we go.
Well, look, I appreciate all the good responses I got from my last vid. But I had made a comment about the Qualitize on the MV, and my man, a guy wrote me, it's on my comments, and told me to use 35% to 45% on my quantizer, and on my resolution use 120. So I tried it, and the MV do quantize like an MP, so I take my statement back. So the MV is the stuff. So what it was, I had my quantizer on 80%, and the manual said put it on 100%. So my man told me put the quantizer. So you guys out there with the MV, if you're having problems with your quantizer, put it on like 35% to 45%, and put your resolution on 120/16, and then the quantize just like a MV. All right, I'm gonna make another beat. I'm gonna let you hear everything solo. First, I laid my kick. Oh no, that's not my kick. I should have labeled it. That's my snare. Okay, there we go.
So that's it. That's the Qualatize story
Oh,
right there.
awesome.
And the guy, he was such a nice guy, man. And so this is not to make fun of the guy or
No,
anything.
no, no.
It's a happy little thing, like but he was super excited once he was able to figure out, and that's the thing. When you come from the MPC, you're used to seeing TC, right, for time correct. And you're used to seeing the values under TC, which were very simplified, which is awesome. Like that's what made the MP swing that way.
Yeah.
The MV, yes, it's a bit more complicated if you compare it to that, because it gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of how you want those drums to swing. Do you want it to really swing like acoustic drum player? Do you want to keep it very rigid? Do you want it like 100% like nailed on the pocket? Like you could totally do that. Whereas on the MP, you couldn't. It was kind of one or two things. And that's what guys got used to, and it sounds great. But with the MV, you can still do that MPC style, but you just have a lot more flexibility. So with having more flexibility, that's why you see more of those percentages, and the resolution can go much higher depending on what you want to do. So.
Yeah. Correct. No, super cool. People ask in the chat. They say make a beat with a sample because, yeah, it's no, and you're right. It's not making fun of it. No, it's just also super. We all have this this kind of misusing, not, but using words in a different way than we for sure. I will have it because you've already noticed English is not my native language, so for sure I make mistakes.
Yeah,
but
the guy, I mean, what he was talking about and everything was dead on. He just mispronounced the word, and that's all. And we all do that. So but it was just really cool because it was one guy who was very upset at first, with an MV, and he didn't understand it, and he couldn't get it to really work the way that he was used to. Yeah. And so he was upset and, didn't feel that the MV, was really a good machine. And then somebody helped him out from the community, from the MV community at the time with MV Nation. And thank God for, for that site, because I think, having MV Nation is definitely what really helped, with the success of the MV, because there was so many questions about it. And, once we got all the information out there, I wasn't able to get to every single state and be able to, show it every single place, and YouTube was still kind of like in its infancy stage at that time. So not a lot of people were, aware of what YouTube was or had access to it. Remember, at that time too, people didn't have phones like with data plans on them. Like all of that stuff wasn't happening just yet. So the access or, to a lot of this information wasn't always there for a lot of people. So MV Nation was definitely a solid spot that I feel really helped, with the success of the machine in, collaboration with all of the efforts that we were doing at Roland. All of that together, really helped build a nice community of MV users and make sure that everybody was able to get the information to really understand the machine, because the machine was great. It's just the language that it spoke was different than the MPC. So just like how you have an accent, right? Because English isn't your native language. Well, it's kind of the same thing. When you went into the MV's native language was different than that of an MPC. Mm-hmm. And so all you needed to learn was just the slang, I guess, and what the terms were and everything. But it meant the same thing. It's just, a different term.
That was a nice bridge. Was nice. Very good. Very good. Yes, but I see in the chat that qualitize is quality and quantize for the MV. So it's a totally accepted word. I totally agree with it. Yeah, very cool. Nice to have it shared with us, that audio. Mike, we spoke about this. You said in the last stream. Please make a list of some topics to make sure that when we dive into the MV, that the right questions, the questions with the most, how to say it, the most important questions that those will
they
be
get covered.
answered. Yeah. And
So I took a look at all of those things.
Yeah.
So I kind of made a quick outline here. So just to let everybody know what I'll be going through today.
Okay.
The first thing that I'll be talking about is mastering on the MV. So I imported in some stems from a remix that I did for T-Pain probably about a year ago, a little less than a year ago. And so I'll go through and explain like the MixDown process and, you know, how to get the best out of the MV. But I will let you guys know this. It's part of it is theory. So it is, you know, some talking and stuff, because this really has to do with MixDown and mastering. Obviously, it's from an engineering standpoint. So there are some theoretical things that you need to know and understand before you go into doing this. And these are things that you would apply whether you're doing it on the MV or in a DAW environment. These are just mixed theory kind of things that you need to kind of know about before you approach this process. The second thing that I'll be covering is working with audio phrases. So going into chopping things, how I get creative with some of the chops, converting them into patches, you know, simple things like that. The third thing that I'll be going into is resampling with the multi-effects, and this kind of ties in with the audio phrases as well. So when I chop things up, I tend to resample stuff. I tend to resample my chops depending on what I'm doing. So I'll be talking about that, and then I'll even go into showing you guys how to create custom drum sounds and using the SMT within the patch edits. So we're talking about the sample mix table, and this is something that I think is highly underused and that many guys don't really know about or understand. And this is the secret area where you can get very, very unique drum type sounds that you make on your own, and not having to rely on always looking for that one sound. You can make your own stuff and get it really customized so that your drums don't sound the same like everybody else. You got to keep that in mind. You know, if you're looking for that 808 that was used on so-and-so's track and the snare from this other, then that means that a million other people are all searching for those same sounds. So your drum tracks are all going to sound exactly alike, exactly the same. And if you're wondering why A&R execs are just passing it by, it's because you sound like everybody else.
Yeah.
So
that's
let
so
that
true.
sink
Yeah.
in for a second. Let that sink in for a second. And then when we get into SMTs, I'm going to show you exactly how you can do some of this custom stuff on your own. A lot of you probably may already know. So, you know, I'm just kind of reviewing these things for those that are probably newer to the MV or not as experienced on the MV as some of the other guys that are in here.
Very cool. So, okay, I noted them. 1, mastering. 2, chopping. 3, resampling MFX. And 4, SMT. Yeah, you said let it sink in, creating a different sound, because you're totally right. We are all like Africa Babetta, looking for the perfect beat, but in the meantime, we're overusing the same sounds and same beats. So that's nice, very cool. That's a nice list, Mike. It's almost 10 o'clock here in Spain, so 1 o'clock in your area. Be my guest, because I love this list a lot.
Yep, no problem. Let me just switch over to the VGA, and then we'll get switched up really quick. So let's go to here. All right.
Perfect.
So there. All right, so I'm sure you guys are seeing my VGA screen.
Yeah, we see your VGA, we see you. They also see me. Nice.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, so we're going to touch on some mastering and mixdown with the MV. Now, the stems that I brought into here, obviously I didn't do this entire remix here in the MV. And obviously this is just to save time, you know, to kind of give you guys an overview of like what this process is. So what I did was I took this remix that I did with that I did for T-Pain. The song was called "Wake Up Dead," and I produced all of it inside Ableton Live. And so what I went and did for today was I exported just my vocal stems, the drum stems, the synth stems, and the bass. So we're working with 4 different stems here. And what we're going to do is I bounced these out and I bypassed all of the mastering effects that I had set up within Ableton Live. So what you're hearing is just the straight raw mixdown of, this track. And the one thing that I'm going to talk about first is gain staging. Okay. Now, before we, go into the mastering and all these other things, one big thing that you guys need to really understand, for those of you who, who are newer to this, so because I don't want to make anybody feel like, oh man, I already know all this stuff. So if you already know this, great, you're on the right path. But gain staging is probably one of the most important things I feel that needs to be done as you're going along, with your song production, to ensure that the mixdown in the end is a really good mixdown. And I always tell guys when they ask about this stuff, if you are able to make gain staging a part of your normal workflow, like get it ingrained in your head that everything that you do, you're always gain staging along the process, I can guarantee you that by the time that you get to the end of your song, when it's all done and completed, if you've gain staged properly throughout the whole process, you've probably already eliminated 50% of your problems, because it's going to put you in a really good position to then leave enough headroom so that you can actually do the mastering and apply different types of effects and stuff to really beef up the mix. The problem that I see with a lot of, producers, more beginner to intermediate, is as they're going through the drums, let me see, and they're playing something, they're like, oh, I want this to hit harder. So what do? First thing they do is they go and they turn up the volume. And then you go back. Okay. Then they add in, let's say, a patch from another part, right? And this starts playing. And now this particular sound that you're adding may have certain frequencies that are probably in the area of where your drums are hitting. So then what's happening now is what we call frequency masking. Okay, and because you're adding in a second instrument now that is kind of occupying the same frequency ranges as, as some of these drums. So anywhere in that mid and high frequency, and even on the top there, you can hear that there's a gate on that kick. So that's probably up there around 5K. Probably 120 to 80, 120 is where this kick is probably hitting. I'm just going off of just my ears. So if I added in a second sound, and that second sound has those same type of frequencies in it where they're very dominant, what happens is, again, what we call frequency masking. This second sound is now going to start competing with my drums because they're both fighting for that space. They both want to be heard. And so since you already cranked up your drums, the natural thing that most guys do, they bring in the second sound is, oh man, I can't really hear this one because the drums. So then what do? Then now they turn up the second sound, right? So now your second sound is getting boosted up. And as you're going and adding in more sounds and more sounds and more sounds and more sounds, let's say 8 sounds later, you have probably now by this point added maybe 20 decibels, 25 decibels to your overall master output. Because every time you're adding a new sound, that's going to increase, the overall, volume. And then you're going to have more frequency masking depending on the types of sounds that you're choosing. And so you start boosting up other ones, boosting up to make these heard. And by the time that you're done with it all, I mean, you're hitting the red, you're smacking hard, and then most guys, their answer to all this is, oh, I'll just put a limiter on it. And so now you're basically having all these peaks, and then you're slicing off the top of it with a limiter to just push it all down. And that's why these mixes that you hear a lot online from a lot of producers with their beat, they just sound overly compressed, really like just distorted. You're not even getting the transients and the hits and everything. It's loud, but it's not a good loud. It's just distorted and up in your face, but you can't hear everything intricately and getting the tone of it all. And that's because throughout this whole process, you didn't do any sort of gain staging. So what I would say, as we're adding in the drums, okay, the next thing is if I added in this second sound and this second sound had those highs, then what I would do is go in, and if I added in, let's say, let's look at this really quick. So I'm going to go to my mixer section here, and I want to look at parts 1 through 8. So in here, so on my second sound, if I went in and now I know that like the highs are competing with my drums, then instead of increasing the overall volume, here on this second sound, what I like to do is I like to go back to the first sound, and I like to maybe scoop out on the EQ, an area that I don't really need from the drums. So like if I know that this second sound is more like upper mid to high frequency, then I would probably go here on my drums and maybe turn down the highs here. I'm not going to go and turn anything up here so that I can cut through the mix. What I'm going to do is go to my drums and take out the frequencies that I don't need from the drums. So if I take 3 decibels off from the top end here at 3K, that means that now there's 3 more decibels of room for this other track to actually shine through. And so if I go and let's say on this new sound, I want to go and say, all right, at 5K, I want to bump this up 3 decibels at 5. And then in my mid, I'm going to come down to about 800. Let's say about 6, like it's kind of like in the chesty area. And I can adjust the Q, and I'm going to give this another bump of maybe 2 decibels, around 630. So then what I should be doing is now I have added 2 plus 3, so we've got 5 decibels of overall gain that we've added on this sound. Okay, so what I need to do now is to make sure that I go back to my level here, and I know that I added in 5 decibels of sound, so I'm going to go and roll this back to 95 now. So I added in 5 decibels on the EQ to those areas that I really wanted to shine through, and then I bring the overall volume back down to 95. And so what happens is my level of this particular instrument doesn't change, but you're going to hear more of that frequency that I want to come through the mix more so. And then when I go back to my drums here, whatever we took out in that area, we put it back. Remember, we took out 3 decibels, so then we'd go 1, 2, 3 to compensate for those 3 decibels that we took out. And so now you've got 103 and 95. So our levels on those 2 instruments should remain exactly the same. No matter what changes we've made to the EQ, the level doesn't change. And that's gain staging, essentially, in a nutshell. So even in your DAWs, anytime that you add a compressor and you're compressing stuff and you're doing the makeup gain, okay, so the compressor pulls down the audio, right? It's ducking down certain parts and then it's making other parts louder. So if you're doing minus 3 decibels of compression, you're getting about 3 decibels being pushed down. Then on the makeup gain is where you would turn it up 3 decibels to compensate for that. And that's how it levels out the quieter parts with the louder parts and keeps them all the same. So it's the same. So when you add in a compressor, and let's say we add in, distortion. Now distortion is going to make things louder, right? And so that's going to, let's say that adds 4 decibels of gain because we put a distortion, plug-in. Then what we need to do is on the output of that distortion plugin, we roll it back 5. And so when you bypass all of your effects and then you turn them on, you should see no change in your volume level at all with the effects or without. And that's proper gain staging. So you're not adding these effects to add volume. You're adding these effects to accentuate certain frequencies that you want to pop out, but you don't want to increase the overall volume. You want to keep it the same so that in the end, we've got a lot of headroom to work with. So if you apply this gain staging process throughout your entire music making process, every time when you're doing stuff or when you get into the mixdown, by the time you get to the mixdown stage itself, you'll have a lot of room to work with, and your mix will sound really good. And that's one thing that I was taught. They told, I was shown that my mixdown should be like good enough for me to play out at a venue. I should not have to rely on mastering to make it sound better. The mixdown itself should sound good enough. The mastering is just kind of like the icing on the cake. It's not going to be, it shouldn't be used to fix your problems. It's supposed to be used to enhance an already good mixdown, and that's the purpose of that. So my first, big thing is to learn and understand gain staging, because even on the MV, you still need to apply that. So if you're applying any sort of like EQs, then make sure that you are compensating for that. So obviously, just like how I showed you guys here in the mixer on my first part on the drums, we took off 3 decibels in the high frequency. So I added 3 decibels back to the actual volume. On the second sound that we added in on this one, we added in 5 decibels of top end and mid top. And so then we ended up rolling off 5 decibels of the overall volume. So I see a question, how low is your dB, is your total mix down normally? So when I start songs, I don't do at 100. So if 100 would be considered, let's say on the MV unity gain, I would probably start this at 85. So set all of your faders to like 85. And that's usually, because in the DAW world, I set all my faders to -15. And that's just kind of a standard thing that I always do. So the minute that I start a new template and I open it up, I get my mixers, open them all up, -15 on everything. And that's where I start. And then I start gain staging so that by the time I get to the end of the track, I should not even be hitting in the red or yellow at all. We should still be kind of like in the green with a really good mix down. And that leaves me, it should be leaving me about a good 10 decibels of headroom that I use for my final mix, my final mastering. So if my mix down is hitting at, I would say right about like -12, -10, -9, somewhere in there, that's totally cool. That's great. That's what I want. And then the mastering is where I will then now start boosting everything up with like saturation, the big bus compressors. I'll be using compressors like say like an 1176 Rev A to control peaks. And then now I'll be able to boost that whole level up to probably about -3 with just the mastering. And that's where you just get that beautiful, like nice airy enhancement on the top end. Everything is nice and punchy. It's all glued together. And so that's why I do that. So starting off your template, I would say on the MV, if you start like at about 85, it's probably the equivalent of -15, from unity gain within the DAW world. And then start making your track that way. If it's not loud enough, I always tell guys, like, don't turn up your monitors. Like if you're running the MV through, a monitoring system, crank that up. Mm-hmm. Don't start cranking up the volumes, in your mix. Crank up your monitors if you need to hear it louder. And then, from there is where you'll start, working on the mix.
Super cool, yeah. This is great information, Mike. Gain staging. I noticed that I'm a beginner with this because this is totally new for me. And it's funny because I see a lot of viewers on YouTube, and the chat is very quiet, so people are listening to this.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, guys. Like I know you guys want more hands-on.
No. I see also reactions from people that yes, this is what I need to know. No, this is quality information. To be honest, this for me is quality information, totally. So cool, very, very, very nice.
So that's just part of, you know, gain staging, and that's one thing that I wanted to talk about first and foremost before we go on to anything else, because this, I feel, is like really one of the most important things. If you guys can make gain staging a part of your normal workflow, I guarantee you your mix downs will be a lot easier to deal with once you get into that mastering stage, because you're going to have a lot more headroom to work with. And then you'll be able to make better decisions on what should be up front versus what should be in the back. And then applying the actual mastering effects, you'll be able to really hear what these things do if your mix down is done properly in the first place. So it's a little hard to really show you gain staging. You know, I keep getting confused with the mouse. It's, you know, with the MV, because we're not using plugins and we don't have a way to really show you layering multiple effects together to show you proper gain staging. But I hope that the examples that I showed, at least just, you know, using the mixer here and you know, a bump in EQ, you know, 3 decibels up, we bring, you know, our volume 3 decibels down. That's gain staging, so that we're constantly keeping our volume the same. We're changing the tone of the volume, but we don't want to change the overall volume. And by doing that, you're like, well, what if, you know, something else is still, you know, still too strong, or it's not popping out in the mix enough? Well, that's fine. You can still find the frequency that pops in that, you know, and bump up that EQ a little bit, still gain stage it. And then again, if it's competing, like, what part of that sound, ask yourself, what part of that sound is it that you're not hearing? And if it's an area that, say, like if it was in the frequency range of like 900 to 1K, all right, well, cool. Well, instead of cranking this up over here, then what I would do then is I would look at my drum section or whatever other track I had, and I would go to that frequency range to see if that track is occupying that frequency range. And I would do that over other tracks as well. So if I know that there's this one track that I really want to stand out in that one frequency range, I'm going to go and check other tracks that I have that occupy those same frequencies, and I'm going to bring those back about 2 to 3 decibels, just a little bit. 2 here, 2 there, 2 over here. That's 2, 4, 6. That's 6 decibels in total in that frequency range now that have been scooped out. And I guarantee you, you'll probably hear your other tracks start cutting through because you've made room for it by just subtracting those frequencies from other tracks. And then those tracks still stay at their same volume, because remember, if you took 2 decibels off, bring the volume up 2 decibels. So you're basically carving out space for that one frequency range. You're keeping the same volume levels on all your tracks, but you're just making room for all of these individual elements to pop out in the frequency ranges that you want. And that's how you get a really well-balanced mix.
Perfect.
So
Super.
let me get out of this section now. I'm going to pop over into our levels here. Let me reset this. Okay. And all right. So like I said, we're working with 4 stems from my remix that I did. And so let's see. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do, let's say hypothetically, we did this whole track in here. So now we would go to mastering, and the first thing that we need to do is to go into mixdown mode, because we need to bounce everything down into one stereo track file. So we'll hit yes. Okay, so now we're in mixdown mode, and what you would have to do now is hit record so that you can give this a mixdown file name. Okay, so we're going to bounce it. Remix, and I'm just going to go V1. Okay. Now, keep in mind, we're hypothetically saying that we've gone through and we've done our mix. So everything that I've spoken to you guys about with gain staging, let's just say that we did all our tracks, everything's gain staged, our volumes are all where they need to be, we've gain staged it all, and we're happy with the mix. Okay, so at this part now, we're going to hit OK. And then now on the MV, let me go back here just to show you really quick. So you'll see that on the MV, the record button is now flashing, which is indicating that it's ready to record. So all I have to do is hit play to actually have the MV mix down everything, so it's going to listen to all of the instruments, the patches that are loaded, as well as anything that is on any of the 8 audio tracks. All of that is going to be mixed down from the master output and is going to then reside within the MV's hard drive as a 2-track stereo WAV file, and from there we take that file to go into mastering. So we're just hit play now. Let me switch back. And all right, I'm going to hit play.
Asphyxiation got me losing my breath. She's my grim reaper, I'm in love with it. It's only been 24 hours, I should probably go and give me some rest. The way that time's been moving backwards, I've been hit by snow, patting the boom in time. Babe. Babe, what's up? Why you do me that way? I can feel my heart beat in my head. You got me staying in this bed, 'cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, wake up there. 'Cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, no. 'Cause I don't wanna wake up there. 'Cause I don't wanna turn up missing, but I can get you out of my head. Baby, I need you to listen. I'ma take 23 shots of Patron. Gotta be coming back home. I don't wanna wake up.
Super nice.
All right, so now it's going to ask me, the mixdown is finished. Do you want to go into mastering? So, of course, we're going to hit yes. And here we are. Okay. So now we're in the mastering section here. I'm going to answer a really quick question from G-Dub. He says, I use my MV primarily as a sequencer for outboard gear mixed externally by ear. Is it wise to record everything into the MV, ultimately to mix down? I realize this is basic compared to the talk. Okay, if you're using external gear, there is nothing wrong with if you want to do everything inside the MV. And this is something I was talking to Roger earlier today. Before we started this, because Roger and I we get on and we run a few tests to make sure that audio and video and everything's all working. So I'm gonna real quick. Let me talk about this. And I don't want anybody to feel disrespected or this is not that at all. We are just talking about realistic things. Okay. When the MV came out, you guys need to keep in mind that this was in 2003. Okay. So this product comes out in 2003, which meant that development for this was already in place, I'd say around 2000, working on this. At that time, DAWs were not as advanced as they are today. That's just reality. It doesn't mean that at that time you could not take the MV and mix it down into something, because obviously they did that all the time. You would take it and guys would mix it, sync it to Pro Tools, and you would just have to run multiple passes, of tracking everything down. Is it a pain in the ass? Yes, because it takes time, because you have to run it in real time for every track or every bus. Unless you had, the output expander or something like that, then you can run multiples, at once, and maybe you only have to do 3-4 passes. But if you don't have, the MV-8800 output expander, which gives you an additional 8 analog outputs, then yeah, you have to run multiple times, to get the sound into Pro Tools or whatever DAW you were using. Now, the external gear, you could sequence it in the MV. What I have done in the past, when I've done that and worked with other artists that were doing that, I exported out the MIDI files from the MV and just dropped them into, Logic, Ableton, whatever it is. And what I did was I mapped them, back to, the instruments. Now that's if I wanted, and the only reason I did that is just so that I have a copy of the sequence data, because I always like to think ahead, because what about in 10 years if I want to remix this particular project? Sometimes there's new sounds, there's new synthesizers. We don't know what's going to be out in 10 years. But if you have that MIDI file, now you've got the original bass line, you've got the chord progressions, you've got all of those things saved, and you can easily reassign them to new synthesizers that you may have at the time. So that's why I do that. I keep the MIDI files because it's important to have kind of like everything from, you know, its starting points, so to speak. So I'll get the MIDI files out. Now, if you're using external gear, as you know, the one guy in the G-Dub had said, all you do is just run the audio out of your hardware into Pro Tools or whatever. And if you have an audio interface that has multiple ins and outs, then you're good. Like if you've got, for example, like in here, I have an Apollo, Universal Audio Apollo, which obviously has 8 analog outs on it and 8 in. So if I had, like my sound modules and stuff, I would route the stereo outs from all of those. Even though the MV is sequencing it, I would have it locked with MIDI sync to Ableton Live. And then I would track all the hardware in on their own respective audio channels within Ableton Live. And it's still keeping the sequence feel of the MV. So if there's anything that you've done with the quantizing or the qualitizing on the MV, because the MV, I will say this, it does have a very special sequencer, and the way that it does things is very unique. So if you have things playing a certain way with your keys and stuff, this is what's going to retain that feel, but you're just capturing the audio in your DAW. And then essentially what you'll do is then you'll run the passes to then take the drums from here. So drums, bass, those really important things, you'll take them out of here, and then that will track into Ableton as well. And so long as you're using MIDI clock, everything will be synced and in its correct place. So that is what I would recommend if you're using like external gear for a lot of stuff, and you're mainly doing a lot of the drum and bass programming on the MV because you want to retain that tone of the sampler and everything like that. That's how I would approach that. So,
cool. Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah. So here we are in the mastering section. Okay. So I'm going to hit play really quick because first thing I want to do is I want to look at where my levels are hitting at and then start making some choices. So.
Asphyxiation got me losing my breath. She's my grim reaper, I'm in love with that. It's only been 24 hours, I should probably go and give me some rest. The way that time's been moving backwards, I've been hit by still patting the boom in time. Babe, what's up?
Nice.
All right, so you can see that based on our peaks here, now to me, I don't know if you guys can hear it, but in my headphones here, like the MixDown to me, it sounds good. Like this is just MixDown,
correct.
and we're not even loud.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm explaining to you guys about how important gain staging is, because it sounds full, it's punchy, but we're not even like hitting near zero. We're down at -12. So again, if you follow that gain staging throughout your entire process of production, you can still have this slamming hitting mix, and it's not even all the way up there. You're like at -12. And now this is perfect because you guys can see that we're barely tapping into the yellow here, but we've got so much room to work with now with the multiband compressor here. And that's what's important. Okay, we need this room, because if you come into this MixDown and you're all the way here at 0, this is pointless. There's no point in mastering this because you have no room to enhance or do everything, because everything is maxed out already. So you're totally like defeating the purpose of this multiband compressor, and that's exactly what this is. So let me explain this. This is a 3-band multiband compressor. Okay. When we talk about compressors, and again, I'm sorry if some of you already know this. I know some of these things are just very basic, but we do also have a lot of, aspirational users here and beginners that are new to all this. So I want to make sure that everybody, has a really good understanding of the differences
important.
between a regular compressor and a multiband compressor. Okay, so this is a multiband compressor. When we talk about compressors, when you're using a regular compressor, the compressor's job is to basically make the quieter parts louder and the louder parts quieter, so that we have one even kind of take that has, I guess it has volume consistency. There you go. That's what I was looking for. So to have volume consistency as the track plays, that's why we bring down the louder parts and we bring up the quieter parts, so that there's a consistent level on that track. And that's what a compressor's job is. When we talk about multiband compressors, all right, this is where it gets fun, because the compressor now is basically being divided into 3 frequency ranges. Okay, you have your high frequency, your mid frequency, and your low. And the reason why for mastering you would want to use a multiband compressor, because if you just put a regular compressor on your entire mix, that means that whatever you set the threshold, okay, so the threshold meaning here's the line that activates the compressor, and when the audio exceeds that line, that's what triggers the compression. So if the audio is below here, the compressor isn't on, and once the audio level passes the threshold, all right, once it passes it, then that kicks the compressor on. Now the problem with using just a single compressor on your entire mix is kick drums are hard. So they're going to be smacking and hitting. So every time that hard kick drum is hitting, it's going to trigger the compressor. And you may not want that to be happening all the time for your entire master mix, because then what happens is you're going to start getting these volume ducking kind of things happening, and you're going to take away some punch. So by having a multiband compressor, we can have individual settings. Damn it, I keep touching the damn OBS screen. By having the multiband compressor, we have control over the 3 individual bands. Okay, so instead of like what I was talking about with a single compressor and the bass and kick constantly triggering it, with a multiband, I can say, all right, well, I don't want the bass to be triggering it, so I'm going to back the attack up so that the bass and the kick just keep punching and those things don't get compressed. And so what I can do is adjust the release on that, and then I can set the threshold for that. Remember, the threshold is the point at which the compressor kicks in. So with the threshold, I can set it very high because I want it to be very, very like minimal. But let's say on my highs, where there's a lot of high frequency and maybe it's a little too much, I'm going to change the attack on that to make it a little bit quicker. And I want the release to be quick too, because I want to keep those peaks down. So I just want it to be acting more as a peak control. So see how those yellow markers that are there in our VU meters, these are the peaks. So that's telling me that that's the highest point or the loudest point of my track that has hit. And that's why those peak clips stay there, because it lets you make decisions over here on the compression so that you know, all right, cool. So on the left and the right, I've got right at about -5, -7 is where it's hitting. So I would have to then go back and listen and then make decisions on stuff. And the other thing too is you have 2 split points. And that's basically where, let me go back over here. So the high frequency and your middle frequency. The split point is just that, is where these 2 things split off at. So for the highs, I'm going to actually do at 2. So that means that my midpoint here, the compressor here, this middle compressor, that means that this middle compressor is only going to, oh, hold on, I'm using the wrong mouse again, damn it. All right, so that means that this middle compressor here is only compressing frequencies between 315 hertz up to 2 kilohertz. And that means that the top compressor here is only compressing frequencies from 2 kilohertz and higher up to like 10K. And that means that my low compressor here, so let me select that. That means that the low compressor here is compressing frequencies from 315 all the way down to 30.
Correct. Wow.
So here's what I'm going to do. So I might not talk a little bit right now. I'm going to just play things because I'm going to be making certain adjustments.
Okay.
But I already know that for my low, I don't want that much. I really want it to control more of the sub bass frequencies. So I'm going to kind of put this at 80, let's see if I can, 60. So just, I want it to control more of that low end sub. And so that means that my middle one here will be compressing between 60 all the way up to 2. So I'm going to bring this down to probably, yeah, about right there. And we'll put this up to about 100. And so obviously this is a little bit limited, but that's what I'm saying, like what I was talking about with Roger. At this day and age, you know, the mastering capabilities that are built into a lot of the DAWs that are available now are really, really good. So I would say at this day and age, if you have the capability to basically mix down everything to an external DAW, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't, if you have a DAW to do it. So if you're an Ableton Live user, if you're a Logic user, Pro Tools, whatever, if you have those tools, there's no reason why you should not be using it. It's definitely going to be, it may be a little bit slower to get everything into there. It's a process. But ultimately, in the end, when we're talking about mixing and doing the gain stage and everything, you're going to have so much control and flexibility in there that you'll be able to get a much better mix. And then, of course, use all the great mastering tools that are available now within the DAW world. And it doesn't affect your beat because remember, all the sequencing is being done on the MV.
Correct.
You're not losing any tone. So all your drums are going to sound exactly the same. You're going to basically bounce them out audio-wise and track it in. So you're going to keep the punch, the tone, the swing, everything. All of that is going to be there.
Yeah.
We're just talking about MixDown and mastering. And it is the same concept as in the 90s. You know, Dre, anybody that was in there, they would bring the MPCs into the studio. The engineer hooks it all up into the SSL console, and then from there, everything would get tracked into, you know, the older Pro Tools systems at the time, or onto ADAT, you know, machines or whatever, or onto tape, you know, onto 24-track tape. And then the engineer is there mixing and everything. Nobody was doing everything all in the MPC. All of this stuff is going out and being ran through the high-end, you know, gear and stuff. So there, you know, you're actually doing yourself a disservice at this day and age if you choose to stay only in the MV because either you're afraid or, you know, you don't think that you will understand the concept or it's going to be a bit of a learning curve. Take that leap. There's nothing wrong with learning something new. If you want to become a master of your craft, you need to learn these things. And it's also a really great way to make extra money for yourself, because if you master all of this process of mixing and doing all these kinds of things and syncing and learning MIDI timecode, well, you know, MIDI sync, it's just really simple stuff. You can help other people, you know, to do this, and you can actually make money, you know, doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is that if you have nothing else and only the MV, then by all means, of course, use the MV. That's what it's there for. That's what this was designed for, is if you had nothing else, you could still, you know, put your song onto a CD to have it played out for somebody. But if you have a DAW, there's so much more that you could do with this. You're doing yourself and your music a disservice if you're not taking advantage of that. So I just want to put that out there, because obviously even with this multiband compressor in here, it's great that it is in here. But in comparison to the multiband compressors that are available today, this, yeah, it's night and day. I mean, we're talking about like 20 years of technology advancements. You know, it's a big difference. So take advantage of what's out there today. There's nothing wrong with it. Make all of your music in the MV. Get the feel of it. Sample everything into it. Get the tone. Get all that good noisy analog crunch. Do all that. But at the end, when it's all said and done and it's finished, it's ready to go, get it all out into either Ableton, Logic, Pro Tools, or whatever it is that you use, and take advantage of some of the plugins out there to really help put the polish on your final mix and get that mastering done proper. It's going to make a huge difference, and if you're trying to sell music and things like that, this is going to help. So just want to put that out there. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to... Oh, go ahead, Roger. Sorry.
No. Thank you. No, thank you for this. What I mean is gain staging, explaining, in general, very important information. And yeah, like I said to you before, I'm not a computer user. I don't use DAW at all. And when you tell me this kind of things, then I feel, man... Perhaps, Roger, you should do it. You should do some hybrid things. But great, thank you. Please continue. I will keep my mouth shut. Continue.
No. We definitely want everybody's input on it, because the way that you're feeling, there's probably other guys out there that feel exactly the same way. And as men, I think sometimes we don't like to say we don't know. It could be that. The macho egotistical thing sometimes with or just people in general. I'm not going to say men. I'm going to just say people in general sometimes, we have a problem with saying, I don't know. And so with that being said, then we tend to stick to old ways because we do know that. And since we do know that, we're going to do what we know. And we don't like traveling into the unknown and learning something new. And I think that that's what really kind of... puts limits on a lot of producers and artists, and they kind of cut themselves off from a lot of potential opportunities by doing that. So, but let's move on really quick. So I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to make some adjustments on the multiband compressor.
Asphyxiation got me losing my breath. She's my grim reaper, I'm in love with that. It's only been 24 hours, I should probably go and give me some rest. The way that time's been moving backwards, I've been hit by still patting the boom the time. Babe. Babe, what's up? Why you do me that way? I can feel my heart beat in my head. You got me staying in this bed. Cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, wake up there. Cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, no. Cause I don't wanna wake up there. Cause I don't wanna turn up this end, but I can get you out of my head. Baby, I need you to listen. I'm gonna take 23 shots of Patron. Gotta be coming back home. I don't wanna wake up.
All right, I'm going to do another pass really quick. If you guys can see, there's also a little gain reduction here that is a little thin line right there. And as you bring the threshold down, always keep your eye on the gain reduction here too, because then you can see if the threshold that you're pulling down, if there's actually any sort of gain reduction being applied. And you can see that green will start popping in there. And once you see that happening, all right, cool, we know we've got compression going. Now that I've got compression happening, I start adjusting the attack and the release of the compressor on that one little area. And on the top, notice I brought it down quite a bit. I did a -20. And so clearly we can hear the compression happening there. And we saw some brightness start to pop out. And so in order to maintain levels again, and that's where I brought back a little bit on the overall level, -3. So it's balancing out my highs. I'm using really soft ratios, a little bit more aggressive on the top end. On the mids, I'm only doing about 2.5, and on the lows, I'm gonna just do a very, very light polish, type of just kind of very light round off on the low end. So I'm gonna just run it one more time and make some adjustments.
Asphyxiation got me losing my breath. She's my grim reaper, I'm in love with that. It's only been 24 hours, I should probably go and give me some rest. The way that time's been moving backwards, I've been hit by a snow pattern of all the time. Babe. Yeah. Babe, what's up? Why you do me that way? I can feel my heartbeat in my head. You got me staying in this bed. Cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, wake up there. Cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, no. Cause I don't wanna wake up there. Cause I don't wanna turn up missing. But I can get you out of my head. Baby, I need you to listen. I'm gonna take 23 shots of Patron. Gotta be coming back home. I don't wanna wake up.
So we just did some mild compression settings. Let me reset the peaks on this. So let me just run real quick.
Asphyxiation got me losing my breath.
All right. Now take a look at our peaks.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got, again, if you're listening in headphones, you can probably hear this a lot better. But notice that we've got a bit more presence. There's a little bit more bump to it. The highs are coming out, but it's not overdoing it. It's, and we're still not even clipping or anything like that. We did some clips as I was making some extreme settings, but as we're going back now, you can see that our peaks are almost where they were before I even applied anything with the multiband compressor. We're very close to where we were before. And that's the whole point. Mastering is not supposed to make this louder and harder. Your mixdown should already be good enough to where it's hitting the way that you want. Mastering is just kind of the icing on the cake. This is not the fix it. That whole thing of I'll fix it in the mix. Nah, you should be doing this as you're going along, gain staging. If you gain stage as along through the process, this is how, I'm telling you, 50% of your problems will be resolved, or not resolved, but reduced. Because you can see here, I'm not having a battle with a whole lot because my mixdown was gain staged all the way. And even with the mastering, we're still not even topping over -4, which means that I can hit at -3, which is usually the good spot that you want to hit for mastering. So let me just play it one more time really quick. I'm going to go here really quick. And notice that with the edit, you can even come in here more and actually make more settings depending on what you want to do. So an expander. So now let's say if we want to expand on certain areas. So on the highs, we brought it down a little bit because some of the attacks. So the percussive parts of the highs were kind of clipping. So I brought those down. But now that the compressor is kind of curving those hits on the high frequency a bit, now we can use an expander to kind of boost back up a little bit. So we can do, let me just hit play.
Asphyxiation got me losing my breath. She's my grim reaper, I'm in love with it. It's only been 24 hours, I should probably go and give me some rest. The way that time's been moving backwards, I've been hit by a snow pattern of all the time. Babe. Yeah. Babe, what's up? Why you do me that way? I can feel my heartbeat in my head. You got me staying in this bed. Cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, wake up there. Cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, no. Cause I don't wanna wake up there. Cause I don't wanna turn up missing. But I can get you out of my head. Baby, I need you to listen. I'm gonna take 23 shots of Patron. Gotta be coming back home. I don't wanna wake up.
There you go.
Mike. Those blocks are still off. We noticed. People said it also. You have to push the switch on off of the blocks.
Where are we at?
So go to F5 or to the right, switch on off because
I was wondering. I was like, what the? Give me a second.
also from the also from
Yeah,
block number 5, the expander is also off, and
I was like,
you thought already. I don't see anything happening. Yeah, I'm familiar with those kind of things. Yeah.
here we go. Let's see.
And the EQ.
Yeah, I'll check those right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Asphyxiation got me losing my breath.
There we go.
She's my grim reaper, I'm in love with death. It's only been 24 hours, I should probably go and give me some rest. The way that time's been moving backwards, I've been hit by snow, happening one more time. Babe. Babe, what's up? Why you do me that way? I can feel my heart beat in my head, you got me staying in this bed. Cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, wake up there. Cause I don't wanna wake up there, wake up there, no. Cause I don't wanna wake up there. Cause I don't wanna turn up this end, but I can get you out of my head. Maybe I need to listen. I'm gonna take 23 shots of Patron. Gotta think coming back home. I don't wanna wake up.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Zito Sonic says now it's slapping like Will.
There we go.
It rocks. It really rocks.
So you can hear, like,
Yeah,
in here, what we're getting
wow.
is in the mid level, it's like the the body of, like, I like to call the chest area of the track is kind of pumping through and hitting. The highs are nice and bright, but we're not getting that ear piercing thing where it's
No.
from all the highs. So
correct.
that's where we're using the multiband compressor to kind of curve that based on the attack settings that we're doing, and then enhancing the overall like 10 to 15K. It's not hurting our ears, but we can hear it. It's nice and bright. So these are the things, again, it's using your ears, obviously, but we would not have been able to, do any of this if we did not have any of that headroom that we set up in the first place by gain staging everything to get us to this, particular point.
Yeah.
So that's why it's very important to gain stage and stuff, so that all of these different things that you can do within the mastering stage on the MV, you've got to have the room to be able to do it, to really hear the multiband compressor shine. It's a great multiband compressor. I mean, it was taken from the VS-2480, so it's really good. It's just, if you can get to, to that stage where your mixdown is good, if you're going to stay completely in the MV, the way to really kind of make that work for you is by allowing yourself to have, enough headroom. And remember, the 2480 was a machine that was just dedicated for tracking. So even there, like, gain staging was a huge, huge thing. And that's why these multiband compressors worked really great with that, if you had everything kind of like gain staged properly and stuff. So the mastering compressor on the MV is actually a really, really cool one, and there's a lot that you can do with it. But again, if you are not practicing mixdown techniques and gain staging and all that, then you're not going to reap all of the benefits from this particular multiband compressor that's in here.
Super.
Any questions that I can touch on right now while we're doing this?
No, all is fine. All is fine. I have to adjust something because apparently apparently my logo is blocking your face.
Oh,
So I will turn off my unit over here, and I will check. How can I? Perhaps it's better now. Yeah. No, super cool. Yeah, super cool. This is really, really great information. So this is topic 1.
yeah. I know it's tough to go through all this stuff because we're already out of time already.
Yeah, we're doing fine. We're doing fine, but it's awesome. You don't have any idea about the importance of this
Yeah,
this
I
topic.
kind of thought that this might take probably most of today because again, I could have shown you guys how to use this and just gone in. Look, here's something that I did,
No,
and
this.
it would have sounded good, but you guys would not have understood why it sounded good,
Yeah.
and what's really happening here, what this multiband compressor is doing, and what you need to do on your end in order to get the best results that you can.
Yeah.
If you are staying completely in the box. So that's why I really wanted to take some time to explain to you guys and give you some examples of gain staging and how to kind of do it on the MV and what the formula is for that. And then show you within the VU meters, this is fully mixed down and you guys can clearly hear the mix isn't bad. If I played that out the way it was without any mastering, it would still do fine on the dance floor.
Yeah.
And that's really what you should be able to do. Can it stand on its own without the mastering? Yes, it's a good mix down. Then the next stage is the mastering is meant to just simply enhance that. So that's why I wanted to kind of explain all of those areas for you guys so that because it is very important how you start will kind of define how you finish. So just wanted to cover that.
It's really great. Awesome. Super cool. Okay, mastering. Gain staging.
So I know we are right at the end of this. Did you want me to...
No, we still have 40 minutes.
Oh, we do?
We do, yes. Still 40 minutes, so...
Yes. You're right. All right, cool. I'm gonna get on going to the next thing. All right.
Oh, no, also,
So,
we
let's get into
continue.
audio phrases. Let's get into audio phrases. Let me just readjust my tempo.
Yeah. By the way, that remix you made, is it downloadable? Can we buy it somewhere? Because it sounds awesome.
I know that it is on BPM Supreme, but I will send it to you. Here, let me do this for everybody really quick. If anybody wants that, I will make that. Give me just a second. Just doing
Yeah,
it.
no, take your time, Mike. Take your time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I say to all, during your mixing, I did some things with my notebook, and also wanted to share this one. Thank you for joining. Really appreciate it to all the people in the chat because this is awesome. It's a real masterclass, Mike. It's amazing. I'm totally flabbergasted, and it's a great session. So no, we continue. We continue.
All right. So everybody, I put a download link. It's a Dropbox download link. So you can download that Wake Up Dead remix, the full.
Oh, cool.
Remix if you want it. It's there, and you guys enjoy that, and you can hear everything in detail.
That's awesome. And where can we find the Dropbox link?
It's in the chat on YouTube right now.
Okay. I did not see it yet, but
I can send you the.
Yeah,
the
no,
link.
it's fine. It's fine.
No. Yeah. Okay, so that's there. All right, so the next one is chopping phrases. All right, so with this, there's so many different things that I do with it. I don't want to really get into stuff. I will kind of explain as I go along, but sometimes I tend to just listen to something, and as ideas come in, then I'll explain what I'm probably going to do depending on what pops in my head. So let's see. Okay. Alright, so there's one phrase there. So there's our phrase. Okay, so the first thing that I'll address really quick that I remember a lot of people always ask questions about is how to have audio phrases, synced correctly, right, with tempo. And one of the tricks here is, you really need to understand what the bass note is. So if you have a loop or something like that, the way that it determines what the proper BPM or tempo of the loop is going to be determined by what your settings are here in the bass note. So if you have something that's like 8 bars or it's 16 or 32, then that's where you will set it. So let's say if I had something like this, 25, all right, we notice that up here the tempo is saying that the original phrase is 126.58. And so I know that this particular loop, what I need to use from it, I just need like 16. So if I switch it down to 16, notice that now the tempo is 81.01. So, if this was only 4 bars or 8, then you would need to set the bass note correctly to that. So double that down, 8. And so now if you look at the tempo, notice that it's half. Half of 8150 would be 4050. Okay, and this is actually really cool because this is how you can get creative with your chops. Because if you then go and turn on BPM sync, our tempo right now is at 88. So if I turn on BPM sync, okay, because it's saying that the original tempo now, it thinks that it's 40, it's speeding it up at double time to now match, our tempo here. So, I don't think it'll let me do it with that. All right. So sometimes you can mess around with stuff by setting the bass note incorrectly. So let's say, we know it's 16, so I'm going to double this to 32, and now we've got... So now we're double timing this, right? So let's say I want to adjust the stretch type. Okay, so now this is double time, right? So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm now going to go and chop. And I'm just going to do something really fast. I want to do, let's say, an auto chop, but I want to do this by equal divisions. Okay, so there's 3 modes that you can chop by, all right? Level just looks at the current amplitude levels in the sample itself, and based on that, it will then insert markers, at the loudest points, right? So it's kind of just using the transients. Now, beat is based off of, obviously, if it's 4 bars or if it's like 8 beats or things like that, you can tell it exactly. So if it's something like a drum loop or something like that, then maybe you'd want to use beat, and then you can tell it how many, divisions you want it to make, out of that beat. And so you can slice it up that way. Personally, I like to do things because if you set that bass note correctly, then you don't really need to mess with beat anymore, because now, like, the MV knows exactly what the tempo is of that phrase, and and it knows it because you've truncated that sample perfectly already. So because I've done that work is why I always like going into divisions, because I know that the loop is already perfectly cut to a perfect loop that I needed, and I set the bass note correctly. So now in division mode, I can tell how many slices I want to be on the pads based on the bass note. So that slow sample, since we doubled it, what I'll do is maybe I only want 8 divisions of that. So if I choose 8, then now you've got okay. So if I want those 8 divisions and I'm going to keep the tempo the way that it is, we would have to resample this. So this kind of goes into the third part of resampling. And this is where I would resample this and then chop again. So we'll come back to this. Okay. So what I did right now was I copied it to another pad. Let me switch back really quick here so I can show you guys the overview. Okay. All right. And what I did was let me just see, I got to get my buttons fixed. Okay. Damn it, it's not. Damn it. So it's copying there, but once you copy to the clipboard, drop it. So I have 2 copies of it, just for some reason.
Should it work to delete the copy, the clipboard like this? I did not know that.
Yeah, but my buttons are all jacked up. I'm in the damn VGA screen. This is why I don't use the VGA screen. I'm just so used to just being on the monitor here.
Me too. Yeah.
So just so you guys know, because I have this in VGA mode, my screen on the MV, obviously with the VGA, you don't see anything happening there. So the screen for my VGA is off to the right over here. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't let me see when certain menus pop up unless I'm looking over here. So just bear with me, guys. It's, I don't work on this every day as much as I used to before. So okay, so it's cleared out. Okay, so if I'm going to go to the quick edit here on this one, and we're going to go back and change our bass note back to 16. Okay. And then we got that there. Okay. Now, this second one we can resample later. So that's just for getting creative, but here we go. Okay, so chop. I'm going to go auto chop. I'm going to go to my divisions and I'm going to divide this 16 times. Execute. Go. All right, so let me switch back over here, top view, so we can look at the pads and you can see. Now we have a perfect, 16 divisions that are out on the pads, okay? And once we have that, then at this point, we can choose Assign to Patch, which is right over here, okay? And when you do Assign to Patch, you can go and actually choose an empty instrument slot, okay? So this would be on your MV, the instrument section. That's where this is now assigning it to, and you can drop something in there and you just hit execute and it'll drop it in there. Once you do that, okay, so here it is where it's been converted into a patch. All right. And the one thing that I like to do is once I have my chops in here, if I hit the first one, notice I like to make a lot of changes on the ADSR envelopes. All right.
Yeah.
And if I go to the next one, there's a little bit of a click there.
Correct.
So we'll go here and use the ADSR envelopes. There, it's gone. Come back. I want like a nice soft tail. Alright. That's just me. I don't want my chops to sound too jagged or edgy because I plan to do more of, something melodic. I don't know. It's just my style for certain things. If I was doing more of a boom bap, where I want it to be dirty, then I would leave a lot of those clips and things in there because it adds to kind of the character and stuff. But I can still add a lot of that stuff after the fact, so we're still good. So I still like to go through and make sure and adjust each of my chops. See, there's a little pop there. Now there is something where you could do zero crossing on the MV-8800. It was not available in the 8000, but it is on the 8800. So I think you go, let's see. Okay, so if you go to menu, then you have your search zero cross. Okay, and if you choose that, it says completed. So it rounded off that click on the front end just a tad bit, but it's not always going to be perfect, just because this is a mixed sound. So if we zoom in, okay, and we want to look at the zero crossing point, and in case some of you don't know what that means, search zero cross. I'll explain that to you right now really quick. So let me just get really zoomed in here on the front end, and that way I can kind of show you what that is. All right. Let me see if I can get one more over. Okay. I don't know if you guys can see this, but
yeah, we can.
Hopefully you can. All right. And if you see right where the start marker is, notice that this peak of the waveform is actually high up. Okay. And notice that there's a line here. It's a straight line, and it's a straight line here. And that's the zero crossing line. That's zero amplitude. And when you see these waves go above, I mean, that's obviously the amplitude of the sound. So when we're talking about like searching the zero crossing point to make sure that we get rid of any clicks, let me see if I can move over one more. I think I passed it. There we go. All right. It's kind of hard to see right here, but where that mark is not on the zero crossing. The zero crossing point of a sample is where these waves kind of go up, and then they come down, and then they come up. And what you want to do is you want to land your mark, your start point or your end point at the 0 point. So where it crosses that line at 0, that means that there's no sound there. And so that's where you would always want your samples to kind of start and end, and that's how you won't have any clicks in it, because that's what we call the zero crossing point. So a wave goes up, then it goes down, it goes up, and it goes down. So if you put the marker right at the 0 point where it's crossing, you won't have any clicks. And that's what we mean when we say search the zero crossing point, is so that you can find the area that there has no volume in it, and that way it's a perfect edit so that you don't get any clicks or pops on your samples when you play them back. Now, depending on the sample, because if the sample is mixed with a lot of other elements, you may not ever be able to get a really tight zero crossing point, because there's other elements and sounds in there that are all kind of colliding together. So in that scenario, then that's where you would use the ADSR envelopes because you can shape that. So if I want to go here, all right, so just round it. There it is. Yeah, but we can hear it at the end.
Yeah, correct.
So there's a little click there at the end. Okay, so we can actually bring this down and shape it. So if we go back to sample edit, what we want to do is look at the endpoint now. And this is another thing that I used to do on the MV. So as you go out towards the left, this makes bigger movements. And as you go in, then it's more smaller, finer adjustments on the end. So if I start to move this, see how it's moving really slow. So I want to try and move it to a zero crossing point. And personally, I like doing this stuff manually because I'm so used to it. There. So, right, that should be a zero crossing. See, it won't be perfect.
You also
That's
can go.
probably about
Sorry.
Yeah, it's probably about the quietest we'll get it. I mean, any place that you go to, you can see that there's other harmonics that are kind of.
Yes. Well, if you zoom out now a little, and if you go to the
Found it. There it is.
correct.
So let's
Perfect.
zoom out. And now. Oh, nope, still there. So this is the example that I was talking about. When you have a sample that's mixed with a bunch of other sounds in it, you may not be able to always kind of, get that click out of it because you won't be able to really find the zero cross. So even if I went and used search zero cross with the endpoint selected, it'll say completed. Let's see. So it's a little better, but it's just minute. And that's where I'm saying, like, you could totally use, the ADSR envelopes to kind of shape that a little bit.
That's nice.
All right. So let's jump out of here. And let's say if I wanted to lay something down. All right. I don't know what I'm playing, so let's see. If it sucks, then I'll start over. This is kind of my process sometimes where I'm just doing stuff and seeing like what feels good. Alright, so let's stick with that for a second. And if I want to turn on a loop. just really quick, I'm gonna need to tune something.
Mike. Meanwhile, shout out to Nick Danger who donated $10. Super cool. Also with a question regarding routing. I cannot move the chat. He wants to know because he is he loves the input and can you see it? The question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So from Nick Danger, Mike, I route all my synths through the MV because I like the input multi-effects and overall sonic frequency of the MV. But it's on 64 voice polyphony. When do I worry about voice degradation? So I wouldn't worry so much about polyphony unless you're playing massive chords. So right now, with 64 voices of polyphony, that would mean the only way that you would, every time you have drums going, each drum hit is...
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt for a moment because what I did not understand about this question is routing external instruments. I route all the time my instruments through the MV, but I'm not sampling them. So I use them as MIDI. And the question is Nick, are you sampling those instruments or are you using them as MIDI? Because I wrote an answer on some paper, and when you route them as MIDI, it doesn't influence the polyphony at all. And then now your answer, Mike, because you're about to tell about sampling.
Yeah, so if, when you're sampling, obviously every drum hit that you're playing that has been sampled is using one voice, for that one sample. So if you have, and so let me be really clear too, if you're talking about a sampled multi-instrument, okay, that is within the MV, meaning like, let's say you loaded up, one of the MV pianos or like a Rhodes patch or something like that. Polyphony on the MV is only about whatever's playing internally from the samples, as that's what I mean, like with the voices on here. So it would have to be an internal instrument. And the only way that you would run out of 64 voices of polyphony is if you had, let's say, all 16, instruments loaded up with strings and pianos and other sort of brass instruments. And these are, I'm talking about, they would all have to be internal sampled instruments. Basically, if you're doing like 4 chords or 5 chords, then that's 5 voices. So if you have, 4 instruments and each of them are playing, 5 voices for these massive chords, so then you have 5, 10, 15, 20. So that's 20 voices of polyphony that's being used over 4 instruments that are playing chords that use 5 notes. So add in another 4 instruments if you were doing that, 5 notes to comprise of a chord, then now, you're basically going, let's say 5, 10, 15, 20. So now you're doubling that. So 40 voices of polyphony. So the MV itself internally with, as far as sampled multi-instruments, you can do quite a lot. But if you're only using it to sequence, an external synthesizer or something like that, then the polyphony is not about the MV. It's really about the polyphony that your synthesizer or keyboard actually supports. So that's the big difference. Polyphony, the MV's polyphony is 64 voices. So that's for all of its internal sampled instruments. But it, if you're playing something like an external keyboard and you're just sequencing it through MIDI, the polyphony of the MV has no effect on that because that keyboard itself has its own polyphony. So whatever the polyphony of that keyboard is what the limitations would be.
Correct. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, cool. Continue with your beat.
So this is usually something that I tend to do just off the top of my head. I start layering things in, and obviously everything is not dialed in just yet. So the next thing that I like to do is I like going and applying different types of quantizes all in real time as the beat is playing. And that is something that, again, to this day, I don't know of any other machine out there that allows you to work that way. Not even in the DAW world a little bit. There are certain drum plugins that kind of have some of those features. But when we're talking about a hardware sequencer where you can kind of massage the quantize in real time and do things, I don't know of any other machine out there that can do it. Not even the MPC-X or today's MPCs can do that. They can't. You have to select the quantize, stop the sequencer, and apply it, and then listen. But it doesn't work the way that the MV does, where all of this is happening in real time. So I'm going to just play things, and you're going to see me going through each track, and I'll be tapping into the actual track parameters of each of these. And you can't see it on my screen because OBS kind of cuts it off, and that's just because the resolution that the MV puts the VGA output is like 640 by 640, so it's a funky screen, so you can't see the bottom tabs. But there is a tab at the bottom. It's right below down here where you'll see track parameters. And so that's also the shortcut for that. I think it's F2 if I'm not mistaken, where you'll be able to see that. And so that'll bring up the track parameter. And what I like to do is I like to leave this window open, and notice here at the top where it says track and it's lit in blue. If you turn the value wheel, you can access every single track from this window. And this is perfect for really dialing in the feel of your drums by utilizing all the different types of quantizes and even utilizing the quantize templates and the strength and the velocity, all those things. And I'm going to do all this stuff in real time so that you guys can hear what's happening. And just to see the really cool part of this is that it's all done in real time while the beat is playing, and there is nothing else out there on the market hardware-wise that allows you to do this. So when I talk about massaging the quantize in the field, this is what I'm talking about right here.
Meanwhile, I've added my MV song menu and track parameters below your screen so people can see it.
There we go. Awesome. Here we go. So now sometimes I'll isolate just these hats in here. And now what I'll do is I like to go with the templates on here, because there's actually a lot of really cool templates here that were taken from live drummers that we had playing things, and we were able to convert that stuff. So you can do things like adjusting the strength on that, and then even the velocity. Sometimes even just messing with the velocity. So something like this on hi-hats can change all this stuff. So there we go. So I'll pull the strength down a little bit. I don't want it to swing too hard. I want it to sound like I'm partially playing it offbeat and it's kind of quantizing a little bit so that it kind of still a little off. But I think that like, kind of works for me. Go to here. Let's go to the drums. So I can hear where the two kicks are kind of clashing with each other a little bit. So one way to kind of remedy that, just by increasing the shuffle, notice that it's kind of shifting them away from each other.
Yes.
So I don't really have to make any adjustments. Just a simple moving of the notes fixes that issue. So sometimes your sound issues with certain drums that may collide can sometimes be fixed just by just reshuffling the quantize and moving certain notes around. So let's see what we can do with templates here. Bring the velocity down a bit. All right, so notice that we have some flanging there, and that's because when I circled back, I hit a note twice, so it's playing over itself. And that's why we're getting that harsh kind of phasing.
Correct.
So what I like to do is, from here, is go into the piano roll edit. All right, so again, you can simply double click. And again, this is just as if you were in, you know, a DAW, Ableton Live, whatever. This is what we call a piano roll. And so I want to just zoom in on where those notes are. The other thing too is there's a I've gotten so used to being without. Here we go. So here's the event list. All right, so this is what I like to use for this kind of thing. Now your event list here, this is telling you, see, if you just use the cursor key and you go down, let me show you here. So just by using the cursor key here, and cursoring up, it's letting me know which sample is hitting at that particular point in the sequence. So we'll go all the way back to the beginning. See, and this is where you can also make adjustments on certain kicks. So notice that one's light and that one's stronger. So now you can go here and let's bump this up to 80. So we're increasing the velocity hit on just this one kick drum. Enter. See? So now they're both hitting somewhat similar. So this is just an easy way to kind of make adjustments on your beat as you're going through. So here, I want to bring this down just a little bit. I'm going to bring this up. Alright, so there's that one, and it's way too loud.
Yeah, this is really old school editing from Roland also.
This is old school, the old school way of doing it.
Yeah. The MC500, the MC50 with the microscope editing. This is cool. Yeah, I love the event screen a lot.
Damn, it's still there. Okay, so we know that it's happening in this one here. Event list.
Yeah, you're looking now for that flanged clap, right?
Yep. Right there. I know this is boring and stuff, but this is kind of just part of the process of what I'm doing things. All right, I don't want to spend too much time trying to find the right note. So again, when I say when you don't take advantage of today's, it like there's no reason to.
But it annoys you.
Jesus Christ,
I'm familiar with the concept.
Oh, you know what? Let's do this.
Using the delete button.
I'm gonna go event list and then hit play.
That's the...
All right. See if that. God dang it. So we just need to shift the note position.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm not going to mess with that right now. I don't want to waste time with that. So what I'm going to do is take this. I'm going to just erase that. I'm going to go here, and I'm just for right now, we're going to copy and paste, and we're going to drop it right there. God damn it. And that's the problem when you do like those free like quantizes and stuff, because it's not going to hit right on the one.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
let's see.
That's cool.
Double click again. Ah, dang.
Imagine that my whole session last week was like this.
Well, I mean, that's the thing when you're using these hardware devices and you're, just solely relying on this. It's like these things happen. That was part of the. Why do you think there were so many great happy mistakes on tracks? Like,
yeah, because of this.
Because of this.
Yeah.
So if normally I would be like, all right, cool. Well, this is, there's too much swing on the drums and it's not working with these particular chops, and so then I start going back and I'll start rearranging these things. Mm-hmm. But let's take all of this stuff out really quick and let's go back to just getting creative with the chops.
Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah.
Okay, so remember earlier we took that sample and we doubled it.
Yeah.
So there's other things that you can do because there's plugins now that kind of do this for you, but the old school way of what we would do was kind of like this, in a sense where, let me take this out. Actually, I can just add another, since we have 8 tracks to work with. We'll add an audio track. 1. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I want to just resample this. And I want to do this trigger by threshold level. And I just set it way down there. And I want this to stop trigger by beat. And we'll set it to 16. All right, and I'm going to hit start. Quick assign. We're going to put this, of course, into an audio phrase, and I'm going to drop it right next to the original. All right, so back here. Okay, so if we go on our quick edit, so here's the original here. We'll put this back to its original, which was 16, and now we've got and then we can set the BPM sync on this. And we're getting all those crazy artifacts. I don't know if you can hear them in the stereo field.
Yeah, you heard them.
Which I like. So now I'll take this chop and I'm going to do this again. And we're going to auto chop and we'll do the division again. But this time I'm only going to do 8 divisions. Okay, and execute. Okay, so there's one way. All right, we can turn this into a patch and double layer, but that's not what I'm going to do. So I'm not done. So let's take this now and we're going to flip this in reverse. All right, perfect. I'm going to take this. I want to turn BPM sync off for just for a second. And I'm going to go back here. And I want to resample again. Level's all set. And we're going to do beat. Now we're going to set it to 8. And hit start. Alright. And quick assign. And I'm going to drop it right back into an audio phrase again. Execute. There. Here. And now chop. Auto chop. Division 8. Alright, perfect. We're going to just say assign to patch. And I'm going to put this right after the other melodic chop patch that I did. So we'll put it there on 8. Alright, so now we're here. And it's named it sample 0098. Alright, first thing you want to do, just start getting creative. Little delay. And now is where you can come in. We can put this into one-shot mode. Alright, so this we want to edit really quick.
Nice nice step.
Perfect. See, now this, to me, this is a really cool sample now.
Yeah, really cool.
I could take this, in fact, let's do that.
Make it a keyboard.
Exactly, my friend. So now we sample. This we will do it manually. Start. Oops. Oh shit. Never mind. Hold on. I gotta be on the actual track. So let's add a MIDI track, and this will be assigned to there.
Yeah. This is a nice step.
Right.
That's a nice step.
So sample, and we're going to resample. All right, start. Stop. All right. And the first thing I want to do is let's go and normalize. So I don't know if you guys can see that. You have an option to normalize here. So this will help bring our sample up to the closest to 0 dB, whichever the highest peak point is within the sample. And then what I'm going to do is quick assign. And we're going to assign it to a patch. And we'll choose an empty slot. And now we choose make keyboard. And so we want to start this just to make it easy for right now, because I don't need it to be that low. We'll start at bank 3 there. Now, normally the best way to do this is obviously
wait. You also have to assign the last one. Otherwise, you will still have the same pad.
Right. What I was going to say was,
excuse me.
when you're doing this, it's if you can find the root key, obviously that'll help. So to tell it what the root key is. But again, we're just doing this, for shits and giggles to make it quick. But you can see that, as Roger said, you got to make sure to spread out the samples. So if you're here, we can even come down. Yes.
My customer service made a donation of $10. Thank you so much, customer service. What a cool name, customer service. With this cool guy with his headphones and his microphone. Thank you so much for your time, Mike and Roger. Can we possibly get a video in the future of tips for tracking vocals in the MV? And also a video making a beat from sampled vinyl for fun. So I will make a print screen immediately of this, because then for future video. This is awesome. Thank you so much, customer service, and I'm on it, or we are on it, or whatever. Super cool. Yeah, continue, Mike.
No problem. So now that we've kind of mapped out the samples, we just hit execute. And if we come to our instrument section here, I go to now. So if I want to play chords, I'm obviously using the pads because I don't have a keyboard connected. Now this is already playing chords in itself, the sample itself, but and so now you've kind of got this whole playable instrument happening. Awesome. And again, you can still come in and now start adding in, some delays. And let's add a little bit of verb. All right, so if we went back here, and now as this is playing.
Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah.
right, so I just added some little staccato things over the top of it. So
Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah.
so yeah.
Awesome. Oh.
So I mean, it's really just about like finding the right samples, and there's so much stuff that you can do with the MV. It really is a thing of experimenting and sampling, resampling, rechopping. I mean, that's really what it's about. Like, I don't want to sit here going through all the different types of ways and coming out.
no.
I mean, what I want to do is just kind of show you guys, some of the process of how I go about. And what I just did right now, I'll be doing this for several hours.
Yeah.
Just sitting there and trying and experimenting, flipping things and everything. And that's how, it's number one, it's how you get your chops down in terms of like how to use the machine. And once you're doing this, you know, you start knowing exactly where everything is. And even as I was doing this, things started flashing back into my head of where to go and how to start getting back into the flow of just working and going. And that's what I do. I don't stop. I keep the sequencer going. And that is probably one of the best things that the MV trumps over any other hardware machine, is the fact that you can do all of these things without ever stopping the sequencer. And that is probably one of the most important, vital things, you know, to kind of finding the right sound, is when you can keep it going and you're trying things and experimenting, but you don't have to stop the sequencer and you're just dumping stuff, trying, layering. All right, cool, that didn't work, undo it. You can still keep doing all this stuff and undoing things still while the sequencer is playing. And I don't think a lot of guys really understand how cool that is, because there isn't anything out there hardware-wise that really allows you to work that way. You know, you really need to be in a DAW where you've got things kind of happening to where you can get that kind of flow. But man, having hands-on with a dedicated machine like this and being able to have that kind of flow back in 2003, you guys have to really understand how far ahead the MV was of anything else out there. So
Yeah. Yeah, you show it. It's and it's what people say still. It's still a gem. It's a real diamond in the rough. And if you treat it well, if you polish it well, it can give you so much. Yeah, it's amazing.
So I just want to show one last quick thing, because
That's
I
fine.
do have to get going. I won't be able to go into everything, but in the third one we can cover more on this, and I'll go more in depth into this. But this is obviously, you saw part of resampling, right? Like, and how important that is on the MV, and how cool it is actually, really, because sometimes when you're chopping things, you may hear, just like what we did today, I was like, oh, this actually is a really cool instrument sample. And I may not use it here, but once I create it as a patch, I can save it, and it's something that I can always pull up, you know, later on. And usually what I'll do is I will set the root note of what that chord is, because you can't really play that one as a chord, because what we sampled was already a chord. So if you play it in different pitches, there may be certain harmonics that are not going to be right in line or in the relative key of whatever it is that we're trying to do, because we've sampled it. So the notes aren't switching. So that is something you would have to do as an individual. But it is still something cool, and I would probably tag that patch with, you know, either whatever key it was in. So if I took that sample, excuse me, if I took that sample and, you know, identified what the root note of that key would be, then I would put that in the patch name, so that when I'm looking for stuff later on, it'll have the key. So if I know that I'm working in a track that is in C major or C minor or F minor, and I see that patch, then I know that those are patches that contain samples that are hardwired to a specific key. And that's how I can use them later on.
Okay, so you give a name to the sample of the root note. Yes, of course, because
because you're never going to know. Like, it may be, you may title the patch "Cool Keys Chop Patch."
Yeah.
Okay, but if you're working on a new song that's in F minor, you don't know if that key patch is an actual proper multi-sample instrument, or if it was something that we resampled from a chord. If it's something that we resampled from a chord, then we cannot play that in any key that we want, because the chord is going to be rooted in at whatever it was. So if it was C major, cool, we can play it up and down a couple of octaves, but we can't make chords out of that, because then everything is going to be out of key, because it's all sampled. We don't have the ability to switch certain keys that may not be relative to the key that we're actually working in. So that's why I tend to do that. If I sample something like a chord, I will usually put the name of the key within the actual patch name, so that I know that it's a sampled chord, and I know that that patch works in either F minor or whatever the two relative keys that work with F minor are.
Yeah, that's a good one. What the MV does not have a tune function. Some instruments do have tune functions to discover in this case, the tune of the note of
Here's
of a
what you
sample.
guys can use. Yeah, here's what you guys can use. AutoTune makes an app that's free that uses the microphone built in on your phone, and it can identify pitch.
That's
So
great.
all you got to do is just launch that and hear it, and it'll tell you what the root note is.
Mike, I feel so stupid with this kind of things because you're totally right. We can use an app. We can use an app because I wanted to say use the internal synthesizer, the MFX, to search for the right note, but.
Yeah, I mean,
you grab your phone. Yeah, you're right.
Work smarter, not
It works.
harder. Like it's all good. Like, look, we know that the MV is fully capable. We know that there's a lot that you can do in it. But if there's a quicker way to do it,
Yeah, why not?
Today, why not? Take advantage of it. Which goes back to exactly what I said when we were talking about mastering. If you're not taking advantage of the DAW that you currently have and your audio interface, especially if you have an audio interface. That has multiple inputs. If you're lucky enough to have an MV that has the output expander, you should be totally taking advantage and using that and recording your stuff out into Studio One, Logic, Pro Tools, or whatever, and really getting the best possible mix and master that you could get out of it. Because yes, if you know what you're doing, there are a lot more possibilities, and you can definitely get something much better out of using the DAW. But if you don't have any of those things, then that's where the MV, excels, because you still could do a mix down in here and get a very decent mix and master out of it that sounds great.
Totally.
So long as you know what you're doing and you're practicing, again, the gain staging and all of those things that go along with mixing. So let's keep all of that in mind. But hopefully you guys were able to kind of get a good sense of where to start and how to approach the mixing and the mastering on the MV and stuff, and maybe getting some ideas with chopping and resampling and how you can slow things down, resample it. And the whole reason why I did that in the first place with the chops, that there's a lot of modern drill type tracks now. We do things where we're half timing samples and they're really spaced out, and then on top of the halftime sample, we're playing the original tempo. So you're getting these swells and underlying reverse tones, and you could still do that in the MV by what I was showing you in reversing and chopping. You could play those chops in reverse. So whatever MIDI file you have, like on the MV, flip it in reverse, and now you're going to play the chops in reverse while the original chops play on top of it. And now you kind of get this call and return type of effect happening between your two chopped instrument samples, and it creates really great atmospheric effects once you start implementing reverbs and delays and stuff. So I just did a couple of staccato hits with that sample that we just turned into an instrument, and just by cranking up the reverb and the delay all the way on that and bringing down the master volume, it adds a little bit of movement and dynamic to the samples, to the chops and stuff. So if we isolate them together, let's see.
Yeah.
So you can hear where it's kind of like they're calling each other. Now, if I wanted to go in and make that stuff stick out even more, I can go to the original chop. Man, I know I got to get out of here, but I got to show you this, guys.
It's awesome.
Hey, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if my wife comes in the back door there and the door swings open.
Oh, I would love to see that live.
If she doesn't look happy, I'm gonna point to Roger and be like, "It's these guys."
It's my fault. It's the bald one.
So here we go. They're both bald.
Oh yeah.
All right, so here we go. Real quick, I'm gonna go to each of my samples here, and I'm gonna increase the attack on all of them. All right, and there's a reason for this.
Man, due to you, I'm watching my door, but my wife is already sleeping.
Yeah, I'm trying to just hurry and just to show you guys really quick, just real rough. All right, back out. All right, so now these two should be playing. Hear how smooth that is?
Yeah, super smooth.
And now what this is doing, this is allowing, and it's creating space for my kick drums and the hits to smack harder because it's not competing. You're reducing the attack. You're leaving space for your drums. So now if we bring the drums back in, we haven't changed volume, okay, on anything, but you might hear a bit more of the punch of the drums come through now.
Come on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Let's get it. Come on. Yeah. Here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go. Wow. This
So hopefully you guys got a little something out of this. You know, there's so many. I mean, man, I could be here for hours. and days. There's so much shit that you can do on the MV. But you know, hopefully, you know, this helped you guys get some ideas. You know, with mixing and mastering. Obviously, half of that is theory and everything, and learning about mixing and mastering. So if you have a chance, read up on mixing and mastering, because those things that you read about are things that you can still implement into your workflow on the MV, even if you are completely hardware based. You'll be able to do that. And obviously with the chops, the possibilities are endless. I mean, resampling, there's so many things you can do, but hopefully, you know, what I did was, you know, helpful and got you guys some ideas and
cool.
thinking about some things that you're that you could do differently or whatever to kind of get creative with your samples and your chops on the MV. So
Awesome, Mike. Super cool. Thank you so much for this second part. And I see people asking for part 3 in May, because we still have to touch resampling MFX and
yes.
SMT. That is
Yes.
also going to be awesome. So
And it'll give me more time to prepare some things for the SMT, because I could do a whole show just solely on the SMT stuff.
So we got June also planned already. No, really cool. Okay, let's do that. Okay, you go enjoy your the rest of your Sunday. I go to bed. Mike, I want to thank you so much for all your time, for this excellent masterclass about mastering and chopping and gain staging. Man, I've learned a lot, and I was a student in my own stream, so thank you so much. Really, really, really cool. And also I want to thank you all the viewers for this live stream. Amazing how it was amazing to see how quiet the chat became when Mike started talking about gain staging. So that means that it was valuable information and awesome. That's
Awesome. Well, I'm glad. Again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Wax that, Scrooge that dude, the mayor, F Magic. I mean, all these guys, everybody. Like, honestly, thank you so much for the continued support throughout the years. I know that you guys have always expressed your gratitude for things that I've done with the MV and the MV community since the MV launched. But honestly, I would not have had a job, you know, at Roland for so long and being so involved with the MV and the SP samplers had it not been for your guys' support, showing up to the Guitar Center clinics that I used to do, you know, all the different remix hotels, SAE Institute, all the things that I used to, I mean, it was the support of all of you guys, you know, constantly, you know, supporting the products that kept me, you know, employed with Roland and everything. And so I thank you guys so much for all of your continued support throughout the years, even after I left Roland and everything. It's so awesome to see everybody here. A lot of people that I have met in person before at different states at clinics. And it's really awesome to just see everybody still loving the MV to this day and using it. So I truly believe what I said, you know, a long time ago when the MV first came out, was that it would eventually make its way in the history of hip-hop music and samplers. And I felt that at some point it probably would be right up there with the MPC and the SPs and, you know, like the SP1200, these classic great samplers that have all played a part. And I'm not going to say that they're going to hold the top crown royalty like the MPCs and the SP1200s, but I would definitely say at the next tier down, with influential samplers and music making machines that, you know, changed the game a little bit for hip hop production and did something different, I definitely feel the MV is right up there, and it holds its own right and can go toe to toe with any other machine out there.
Very cool. Well, let's close with this this mic. Very good. Thank you again. Thank you all, guys. This is the end. 2 hours and 40 minutes. So cool.
Sorry about that.
No. Meanwhile, when you were totally into the MV, what also was what we said before, I messaged in the chat to say, well, Mike is on fire. I will not disturb him. We continue, and there is seriously nobody who said, please let him stop. No, the other way around. Continue. So this is awesome. This is very important. Mike, thank you. Everybody, thank you. We see each other next time, and Mike and I will make another appointment for part number 3, guys. Thank you so much, and we see each other next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.